Hello and welcome to That Eurovision Podcast, Eurovision with a slice of life. I'm your host today, Angus. This is my first time hosting, so this will be quite an adventure for me, you listeners, and two great guests. None of the OGs are here, so that's exciting and terrifying in equal measure. I've been doing great. I've just been busy I did all my Christmas shopping. My parents hadn't yet, so I was busy doing that and just with not to date this episode too much, but Junior Eurovision is basically happening as we're recording. So there's a lot of news going on with that I'm running around. But beyond that, I'm doing great. Joining me today are...
Hi, everyone. It's Helen. It's been a minute since I've been on the podcast because I've been busy, but I am back and in the middle of prepping for Christmas and for my siblings to come over and visit me, whom I haven't seen in almost 2 years. So that's exciting. Making sure that we all don't get COVID. We are being as safe as possible. So there's that. We're also certainly in a Christmas mood. I turned on the TV this morning and The Christmas Story was on. And if you're from the States, you know just how much of a Christmas classic that is. So that was a great start to the morning. But I'm excited to be here to talk about this country.
Hello, and it's Isabelle here again. So shortly after my last visit to podcast land, I've basically been down with COVID booster side effects since then. So this is my first day of recovery from that. So if I sound a little groggy, that is why. I'm, only just done feeling horribly sorry for myself. It took me out for a good 48 hours, which is actually nothing, like in the grand scheme of things. But at this time of year, particularly, that's like, that's a good chunk. That's a good chunk out. But I am delighted to report that I have just scoffed a mince pie. I'm getting ready to, again, safely, like Helen, safely see family. I'm meeting my nibbling for my brother's child for the first time this weekend. We obviously all haven't seen each other for a good couple of years, so it's exciting and also daunting. Got to take that lateral flow test later today, so fingers crossed it's a negative result and I am still good to go down there. I'm really excited about this episode. No OGs, so we can cut loose. I'm kidding. What is quite exciting is we all have a Dutch connection of some kind. Mine is the most tenuous. I just happen to have grown up in Holland for the Netherlands for a good number. There's me botching the bloody name of the country immediately. Wow, good one, Isabelle. Yeah, I happen to have spent about 10 years of my collectively 10 years of my childhood and teens in the Netherlands and Den Haag. My other two friends here on the podcast have much stronger connections to the Netherlands, I will say. But yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm very excited to dig into today's topic. As Isabelle said, we will be doing another country retrospective about the Netherlands. I am your local Dutch friend over at That Eurovision site. Lived here for almost my entire life, so I should be adequately prepared, or so you'd think and hope. Now, as we always do, we do a bit of Wikipedia entry reading, basically. So Netherlands, Nederland, the Pays-Bas, as they always have to say with the 12 points, debuted in the very first contest in 1956, with Jetty Parel performing De Vogels van Holland and Corrie Brokken singing Voor Goed Voorbij. Netherlands has gone on to participate 61 times, missing out a few times. Either because they didn't, because of the relegation system in '91, they didn't participate because it was on our National Day of Remembrance, and I might be missing some other contests. But we appeared in the final 52 times. More on that later. In the time that Netherlands performed, we finished first and last, equal amount of times, 5 times each. We won first time in 1957 with Corrie Brokken's Net als Toen. 1959 with Een Beetje being performed by Teddy Scholte. 1969 we were one of the 4 winners with Lenny Koer's De Troubadour. In 1975 Tietjen won with Ding a Dong, and then we had to wait until 2019 when Duncan Lawrence brought the contest to Rotterdam with his song Arcade. Our most recent entry was Janko McCoy, who performed Birth of a New Age. Now, we have a lot of songs to choose from, and that means that let's just immediately start off with, what are your favorite Dutch entries? Top 3, top 5, however many you want to give.
Oh boy, where do I start? With the Netherlands in particular, I feel a bit of an affinity. I am originally from West Michigan, which is one of the areas of the United States where the Dutch immigrated to, particularly in the late 1800s. So there's a very strong connection there. Head of the Dutch Christian Reformed Church is located in Grand Rapids, where I went to college. So very strong connection. And so in terms of just my natural bias towards the Netherlands in general in Eurovision, they've genuinely sent some really good songs. A couple of the older entries that I want to mention, oddly enough, I have a affinity for Ronnie Tober's Morgan from 1968, which unfortunately placed last, but that's fine. The Netherlands won the next year. I don't know. Something about watching that performance during Eurovision again earlier this year. It was just very charming. It had a great stage personality and did not deserve to come in last place. There's a couple others that did, but we won't talk about that now. I also really like, you know what? I really like the winner from 1959 in Beche. It's just a nice, bouncy song, and it's very different from a lot of the winners that we got during that time that were very, very lovely ballads, but ballads nonetheless. In terms of more modern entries, I'm one of the few people I know that actually likes the 2018 entry, Waylon's Outlaw In definitely prefer the studio to the live for reasons. But for someone who doesn't like country music, like myself, then I actually quite like a lot of the country tinged entries that the Netherlands has sent over the years, which is really ironic because West Michigan Dutch descendants really love country music. It's interesting that that's kind of a genre that they've stuck in, but they've done pretty well with it. And then I have to shout out our entry from this year, Birth of a New Age by Jonathan LaCroix. I think the Netherlands did the right thing in terms of picking their host entry, and both songs that ended up being submitted for 2020 and 2021. But Birth of a New Age in particular, it says so much that goes beyond the scope of the contest in terms of acknowledging the Dutch colonial past and the ramifications of that, and really bringing forth voices of color in Eurovision in a way that I don't think has ever really been seen in quite a long time, if at all. And even though it didn't do well in the televote this year or in the jury, I think it's an entry that will be remembered very, very well in years to come, and will have hopefully a huge influence on the type of entries that are sent by other countries.
That's awesome. I love that you just said all of that. I completely agree. I'm gonna give you a top 5, a top 6 actually, because like my number 5 is like a tie, okay, which I think is fitting. It's actually, my number 5 is a tie between 2 songs with like some like weather related lyrics, which I thought was kind of just like a fun coincidence. Then again, maybe not that surprising. I do love a bit of weather in a song. I'm a big Jacques Brel fan, so you know, Benelux singers just, you know, expressing their emotions through weather systems, clearly a thing I have a soft spot for. What can I say? So tied in number 5 for me are Edzilia Rombly with Hemel en Aarde, which I think is just such a charismatic performance. The song itself, I think, does feel dated now. It was 1998, so like, of course it's dated. That was a really long time ago at this point. But her performance of it is just so flawless and so charismatic, you know. It's just infectious. When it comes on, I just start doing the little shoulder bops. It's just a great track, isn't it? Definitely one that'll get you dancing when it comes on in the club. But I also love, and this, I don't know if this is controversial or not, like maybe I'll be made fun of for this, but 1987's Rechtop in de Wind, which means upright in the wind. Okay, so like it's another whole kind of, you know, resilience, standing strong, getting back on your feet kind of number. And it's just so 80s. Like, it's just every single part of it, down to the shoulder pads in the stage performance, right, and the costuming and all of that is just so deliciously, outrageously 80s, that I just love it. It's all of the things that I love about 80s power pop. It's just so unashamedly itself. So I stand by that. I will defend that to the death. In number 4, with a really different, just moving to a completely different vibe, I love 2014. I feel like a lot of people would place this in their top 5 Netherlands entries. The Common Linnets, Calm After the Storm. I feel like they certainly weren't the first to bring a quiet, 2 voices, you know, one, just kind of 2 performers, an intimate sort of inward looking moment. By any means, they weren't the first, but I do feel like it's one of the, perhaps the entry that's done that most effectively. Certainly paved the way, I feel like, for entries like Slovenia in 2019 with Sebi, even the quiet 2 performer, 2 voice situation of O Jardim, Portugal in 2018. Those are some of my favorite entries. Like I love an entry that is able to just totally change pace and bring us into this tiny, tiny world, and the bittersweet longing that's in that song, that's in other songs like it, I just adore. I think it's perfect. I really think it's a perfect entry. In a different year could have won, right? I would never exchange Conchita as a winner that year for the world, but in a different year, really, I think the Common Linnets would have taken it. Really refreshing as well, like after a bit of a bleak period, to have such a strong entry, after quite a strong entry in 2013 as well for the Netherlands. My third favorite is De Troubadour, the joint 1969 winner by Lenny Cour. Again, you know, referencing me. I'm not saying she was referencing Jacques Brel. I'm referencing Jacques Brel because it reminds me of chanson française, which is something I'm very familiar with, being French, but I'm aware that the Netherlands has its own sort of tradition of that, a sort of an equivalent kind of song, that sort of narrative, almost speak singing. It works with the language so well. It's a really if you've never heard Dutch musicals or musicals sung in Dutch is a fantastic singing language for musicals. Like, it's just, there's something about the Dutch language, to my ear anyway, that works so well with narrative, storytelling type songs, and a troubadour is really that. I just love it. There's something, it's very nostalgic, both the sound and the lyrical content. That's my winner in 1969, you know. I just absolutely adore it, and I don't think it's aged a day. I think it's still just as beautiful now. I just love her voice. I love a deep, rich voice like that. My second favorite. So now we're gonna like move right forward, okay? And Isabelle, who loves the late competition, the recent contest, come to the fore here. My second favorite Netherlands entry is Duncan Lawrence's Arcade. His performance in the grand final is just amazing. Like, every aspect of it is so good. it's like the song itself is so strong. You can tell when you get a really good song in Eurovision. Well, I mean, in general, but in Eurovision particularly, because like every other artist will cover it, you know, and Arcade's definitely one of those songs. It's just songwriting wise, so perfect, so gorgeous. His voice is beautiful. The staging so simple, but so kind of atmospheric and evocative. It's just obviously a really emotional sing as well, and that really comes across in his stage performance. I love, again, we've got another sort of bittersweet song, haven't we? I love a good melancholy moment, which is funny because actually the Netherlands, I think, does like uplifting jaunty tunes really well at Eurovision, but a lot of my picks are like these quite melancholy sort of nostalgic moments. I will say probably the main thing, in fact, the only thing I can think of in that detracts from Duncan Lawrence's performance. I don't know if I'm the only one out here because I haven't seen anyone else mention this, but it feels rushed to me a little bit, right? And it's something to do with literally the actual pace of it. Not pace, because the pace is perfect. The speed of it as he performs it, you know, for Eurovision, and the combined with the particular beat of the drum machine that's being used. It's interesting to me to see that when he performed it live, I haven't seen that many of his live performances of it outside of Eurovision. When he performed it live on one of the late night shows in the States, he added it's 14 seconds longer, and it felt a lot more comfortable. Like it's interesting because it is like exactly 3 minutes, and it felt like it was supposed to be a bit just a touch slower. It sounds like I'm being nitpicky, but perhaps I'm being so nitpicky because I love it so much. And two of my favorite singers, who are also, you know, previous Eurovision contestants, have covered it, I think, incredibly beautifully and in ways that I think make it slow down. So Daddy Frère, if you haven't seen Daddy's Euro Daddy like series, then you absolutely have to. But actually, I think that his cover, Daddy Frére's cover of Arcade, exists on its own. I don't think, now that I think about it, I don't think it's actually part of that series. He doesn't add any length to it, but what his voice does is add swing naturally, and the fact that he adds that swing makes it feel slower. It's really interesting, I think, to observe, but his version is very beautiful as a result. And Clemens Hannigan of Hattari does just, I think, I mean, I'm very biased because I absolutely adore him, but does, I think, the most beautiful version of Arcade, and he adds a full minute to it. Like the whole thing is so slowed down. It's also acoustic, so it's unfair to compare them, but I say all of this because having listened to those versions, which I love so much, going back and actually listening to Duncan Lawrence's, the recording as well of Duncan Lawrence's Arcade, it feels rushed to me. Wow, I've spent an age talking about like this very specific aspect of this one song that I actually adore so much. It's my second favorite entry from the Netherlands. I love it. It's perfect. It's beautiful. My absolute favorite though is Django McCoy, Birth of the New Age. It's so disheartening to me, and I think also revealing to see the response that both had on the night, in the run up on the night, and also kind of latterly. It was so severely underrated by all parties, jury, you know, televoters, comment sections on YouTube, spamming broccoli emojis, which is disrespectful. I'm just going to say that. Unoma broccoli does not sound like broccoli, okay? They're really different sounds, okay? So if you're one of those people, okay, I'm going to get stern here. If you're one of those people who hears that and thinks, lol, broccoli, I just want you to take a little look in the mirror and have a think about your choices that have led you to this, okay? We love hearing new languages at Eurovision. Django McCroy brought Sranantongo, which is the Creole. It's the lingua franca of Suriname. It's not an official language of Suriname, but it's the lingua franca. It's the Creole, the language that, you know, was essentially, you know, created organically to enable all these different ethnic groups to talk to each other in this melting pot of a country. For him to bring that to Eurovision is a really strong it's a really strong statement. It's a super strong statement that he was selected as an artist, being, you know, Surinamese. I've been told that the Netherlands, like most, you know, Western European countries, do not like to acknowledge their colonial past. The fact that they clearly are acknowledging their colonial past by bringing a Surinamese artist and, like, you know, making that the statement, I think is really strong and really positive. Yeah, Django's inclusion. So it's interesting because his original entry obviously was 2020, which never went ahead, was Grow. And that's a really personal song. And I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's, pun not intended, it's grown on me. But there's nothing sort of beyond the personal within that song, is there? Whereas Birth of a New Age was written explicitly as an anthem, an ode to ancestral resilience, and more specifically, an ode to Black resilience in the face of the history of slavery in the Americas and associated with Western Europe. It started as a poem, which I think explains why the lyrics are so strong and so beautiful. Again, if you haven't looked up the lyrics, go look up the lyrics. I'm sorry, I'm in like preacher mode here, aren't I? I'm really like lecturing, but I think it's important. Okay, it's the lyrics are incredibly poetic, but they're so strong. And here's the thing that I found quite baffling about people not connecting with the song, because I've heard a lot of people say that they just didn't like it, or they just didn't connect with it, or it just wasn't catchy. On the night, and I think we can all agree that 2021 was an incredibly strong Eurovision year. On the night, when I took my little loo break, right, at the intermission, sorry if this is TMI, you know what song was in my head? It was Birth of a New Age. It was Our Rhythm is Rebellion, Our Rhythm is Rebellion. Like that refrain is so catchy. And the lyric that stood out to me, again, on the night, before I Googled the lyrics later, was, they tried to break you of your faith, but you are the rage that melts the chains. Excuse me, how powerful is that? And given the year and a half that we had just had as well, what a strong and powerful message. It's just so perfect. And then the Saranantongo, the refrain, "You no mabroko mi mina afusensi." It comes from, it's like a slight twist on a Surinamese proverb that goes something like, "You can't break me, I am but half a cent." No, that's what the, wait, hang on, what is it? That's what the lyric translates as. You can't break me, I'm half a cent. The meaning of that is, I'm already the lowest denomination possible. You can't break me further, which is like, oof, just sends shivers up my spine. Also, if you hadn't listened to the song until Eurovision, then you have no excuse for confusing the lyrics with broccoli, because they were literally emblazoned on the back of the stage. No, I will not stop talking about this. I'm upset. I will stop talking about this. Basically, everything about that, I haven't even gone into the staging of it. I mean, everything about that I think was perfect. I will back it up until I die. Django McCoy deserved so much better. It's a moment of hope, and I think, like Helen said, a really positive kind of indication of what might, what we might see going forward into Eurovision. Like, I think it's going to be a historic moment. I think it will set the stage for more entries that connect with maybe those kind of uncomfortable parts of Western European colonialism and white supremacy. Like, maybe we'll see a little bit more of that. It's like political, but like in a way that I think is unarguably universal and right. So like not the kind of political that might, get people into trouble or countries into trouble within the contest. Like I think it's the kind, because we see these sorts of political messages from Eurovision entries all the time, actually. So I don't think that's I don't think that's going to be a problem. I'm really excited to see what its influence is going forward. And at the same time, it's a moment of despair, because actually what stopped it doing better was just racism and xenophobia, wasn't it? It was just pretty clear. Like, people want more ethnicity and more culture, but not that kind of culture. People want, native languages, but not that kind of native language, not a native language that's a South American Creole. People want representation and a strong, powerful message, but not if it's that explicitly uncomfortable, not if it's that explicit, not if it's going to make, us poor Europeans, us poor white people uncomfortable. Quite enough of that. I do want to shout out a couple, but I'll keep it super short. I really do have a huge soft spot for 1976's The Party's Over Now, or is it just The Party's Over? Sandra Rima. It does so much. It's so theatrical and it's so dramatic. I love her voice. It's this rich, gorgeous voice that that's exactly the kind of voice that I love. And again, it's, this bittersweet sort of moment. I do like a bit of that. I've already shouted out Jungkook McCoy's 2020 entry, Grow. I don't think there's much more I need to say about that, really, other than I think it was just a beautiful entry and very personal. I've heard a lot of people say that they much prefer it to 2021's. I would be so curious to know if it had got, if it had its moment in the contest, would it have got more votes or not? I do wonder. And I have a real soft spot for the 1956 entry, De Vogels van Holland. I think it's just, I think I have a bit of a thing for, like, basically singers like singing about the Netherlands, right, in this kind of like slightly bittersweet way, the slightly melancholic but sweet way. There we go. I mean, I guess my tastes are pretty strong, huh?
I'll try to be quick. I didn't think it would take this long to the short list. I'm sorry for derailing this with just one question at the beginning. Jungkook McCoy, definitely. Like, I try to avoid, especially with a country that has so many entries as the Netherlands, I try to avoid mentioning recent entries if I can, because of recency bias and all that. But both of them definitely are likely to be in my top 5 in the following years when I slowly let them to come in there. But beyond that, I mean, and there's also, what else can I say that Isabelle and Helen have already said about it. Same also for Calm After the Storm and Hemel en Aarde and the Troubadour, which just leaves me with 2 songs that I want to mention. Birds wasn't shortly mentioned, Anouk's 2013 effort. Anouk just has a lovely, rich voice, and it comes out great on the studio cut and in the live version, and it's just this very bittersweet song that her voice and her style of songwriting is just perfect for. And the other one I want to mention is actually on my ESC 250 list, and that's Amsterdam by Maggie McNeil from 1980. That is, besides the Troubadour, that Amsterdam is also typical Dutch music to me. Like, it has a bit of like a semi-chanson vibe, but then you get like the draai orgel, the street organ, I believe the instrument is called in English. Like, that instrument sort of comes in at the end, which we did try to get with Seneca to no success. And yeah, actually, let me just quickly pivot into that Dutch staging. I'll just quickly mention, it's been a ride. We've done some great staging. 2014, 2019, and 2021, I think, are examples of great staging. We also did the Whalen staging. We had the Joan Franca staging, which also ruined the song. Whatever happened in 2015, if we're going on the not controversial but just bad side. And just, we'll get into the zeros in a moment, but for me, I always knew the Netherlands as the country of bad staging, to be honest, together with Germany. But it's the other thing it's of course known for is country music. We've touched on a couple of entries, mostly Calm After the Storm, that went to that direction. And the Netherlands, of course, continued with that for quite a few years to come. And just was thinking your thoughts on the Netherlands and Eurovision in general, and our country fame especially.
I think the Netherlands probably has one of the greatest comeback stories in recent Eurovision history. I guess we'll mention it now, or I'll discuss it because there were 8 non-qualifications in a row. Not all of them deserved, I don't think. I think it just
Justice for Etcilia, her second
yeah.
go.
Oh yeah. I think some of it has to do with just the field that they happen to be in, and some of them were actively bad. But you look at something like I think the example that the Netherlands set early in the 2010s, they didn't get a win right away after changing things up from a national final to internal selections, but they set the groundwork. They not only made the final for the first time in 2013, but I think they came top 10th, but did very, very well. And then the next year ended up coming second. And as Isabelle said, in any other year would have won. And even if there was like a little bit of a hiccup in the middle of the decade, like they've qualified every year since 2016, and with entries that even if they weren't amazing, have been generally well liked. I have a soft spot for Ogene in 2017. Their live vocals were just incredible. But they eventually, worked hard and set the groundwork and got their win in 2019. And I think the way that they operated, especially with how they did in 2014, may have inspired other nations to kind of switch things up. So we saw in 2015, Israel switch things up and maybe followed that example with not going to internal selections, but I think was it Rising Star? They switched to a different national final and they started getting their results, and of course eventually won. Czech Republic came back, and I can't help but think that they maybe saw what the Netherlands were able to do after having such poor results and said, we can do that too. And sure enough, since they've returned, I think they've had several qualifiers and several songs that were well liked and have gotten very good results. They've even come top 10. So I think really the story of the Netherlands in Eurovision in recent years especially is a really inspirational one. And maybe other nations, cough the UK, might want to take a big risk. Switching from one music publishing company to another is not a huge one, but that's my tea on that for the day. But I don't know, I know I said this on the Austria episode as well a while back, but the Netherlands has been one of the countries recently for me, even discounting like my Dutch bias, they've delivered songs that no matter what have been of good quality and have done well. I don't know if we'll see another win from them so soon. I think they deserve maybe a bit of a break after working on one contest for 2 years in a row amidst COVID. But I want them to keep doing what they're doing and to keep taking risks and doing things that are changing the game like they did, especially in selecting Jonggu and really supporting the music that he brought to the contest.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'm interested to hear you say, Angus, that you thought of the Netherlands as like the country of the bad staging, because actually the thing that like strikes me is that and I can see why because actually if we're all, you know, I think I'm about 10 years older than both of you, but like we're all kind of an age, right, that we like grew up, broadly speaking, with a, you know, the millennial like 21st century contest more so than the 20th century contest. And there have been some questionable moments for the Netherlands in the 21st century, for sure. So I could see why, like, based on maybe the first like decade of this century, you might think like, oh no, the Netherlands, the bad staging. But actually, like, I think that's something that they've done well, pretty, I mean, for the most part, you know, again, not all the time, but for the most part consistently, is really simple staging that just lets the song shine. Something which we could see more of, to be honest, that I would be happy to see more of. It's a fine line, obviously, between simple staging and like sparse staging that's like not, that feels unfinished, or like that doesn't feel sufficiently fleshed out. But for the most part, I think what we've seen from them, you know, bearing in mind the context of the contest at the, you know, in every era, I think what we've seen from the Netherlands mostly has been just simple, effective staging, not fussy, basically, not fussy. Like I said, there are exceptions to that. There have definitely been some very fussy stagings that we could have done without in more recent times. But again, you know, going and looking at kind of the more successful recent entries, things like the Common Linnets and Duncan Lawrence, they just had staging that was so simple and so atmospheric, and to me that's a really nice progression from like maybe the staging that we saw in the 20th century, which might seem dated now. I'm thinking particularly of like the 80s. Like it really looks awful, I think, to a modern eye, but so much of this so much of the kind of the aesthetic disconnect for me is actually not to do with the countries themselves. It's to do with like the host nation's staging decision, right? The kind of the backdrop that they give every act, right, which definitely looks terrible now, but there's not much you can do about it, right, other than show up in a fabulous dress, Maggie McNeil. Props to Maggie McNeil for like actually like a dress that could have made so much distracting sound. If you look at her performance, she doesn't bring her arms down at any point, and it's because if she did, it would be a disaster. Yeah, I think they've done a pretty good job actually of staging. I mean, I like what they do. But I could see why maybe others might disagree. And certainly not without exception. 2018 was a mess, in my opinion. I would like to erase it from my brain. Unfortunately, it's a really catchy song, so it's quite hard to erase it from your brain, but I would like to erase it from my brain. How do I feel they do at the competition generally? Yeah, I think that's my main point. Like I've already discussed the stuff that they do well, in terms of the songs and the entries themselves. So I don't think you need to hear from me much more on that.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with most of the things you're saying. I think maybe I'm, in a certain sense, maybe it's just hypercritical, maybe just a constant state of disappointment with the country. I mean, it's also back when I potentially could have gotten into Eurovision first, when we're talking like 2009, 2010, that was really, we had 3 bad entries in a row, the Toppers, Sineke, and the Triers. And I know Sineke is having this semi-ironic revival in the Euro fandom right now because we're sending in something in Dutch again. But those were really bad. Also, like, I know the Toppers and Triers, like I was aware of the music beforehand, and it's not my kind of thing, to be very gentle about it. So that all just didn't help. Would also be great if they could actually hit a note on stage. sorry, I'm so mad about especially the Triers. I'm sorry. That being said, there is definitely, like, I think the 2 conversations I usually now had when people think of the Netherlands and Eurovision, you talk about is either the country music stuff, like where does it come from, and how can other countries learn from it? And a lot of people, especially, then talk about UK. And I think I first want to quickly talk, and especially hear Helen about the country music connection, because I think she can tell us more about it than I can with my. I mean, I can basically just say like, okay, this was Ilse de Lange's career trajectory and how I know her, and that's it. Uh, but I think she could tell us more. And then afterwards, I want to touch on the UK and what can we learn from the progress.
I mean, I don't really know how this connection happened, except that like I just find it such a funny coincidence that like the place where I'm from, I got generally annoyed at how much country music was on the radio or how much it was played in the college I went to. Specifically, I went to the Christian Reformed Church college that was owned, and it was very, very Dutch. It was the first place I went to anywhere where people got my last name right on the first try. But I just found it so funny looking back when in 2017, when I really went back and really got into Eurovision and started looking through like all the countries, like past entries, how many of the Netherlands entries in particular were very tinged with country. We haven't even talked about Douay Bob from 2016 yet, which is probably the countryest of them all. But I just think it's so funny that like especially considering the disconnect between like people in West Michigan, where there is a city called Holland, no less, they are super in touch with like what they perceive as like the Dutch culture. So like they have a tulip time every year, you know, all the costumes. I did do that when I was little. We have speculaas. We have like a ton of windmill cookies. In fact, my parents are sending some over for Christmas because they distribute some as part of their work. I won't get into that. But I mean, people tend to be very, you know, engrossed in Dutch culture and specifically Dutch ancestry. My grandpa, who recently passed away, that was like his big thing in retirement, was tracing our ancestry back. And he even got as far as like figuring out the city in the Netherlands where like my great grandparents came from, which is really cool. But like there is such a disconnect because the Dutch diaspora, at least in West Michigan and in Iowa, where the other half of my relatives live, tends to be quite conservative in terms of their values and who they vote for. But the Netherlands itself, some of the things that have been legalized in terms, or that are normal, like the first thing that comes to my head is like marijuana use, is like the Dutch diaspora in like West Michigan would just have a heart attack. So the fact that the country music is like a connection between the two because they're so different is just absolutely hilarious. And that's kind of been my way in of like telling my Dutch friends in West Michigan, like, hey, you should watch this thing that the Netherlands is part of if you're so full of national pride. So there's that. I don't really have like a theory behind it. I just think it's a funny coincidence.
I can theorize just gently because, you know, this is not my area of expertise by any means, but it's sort of there's and I actually like to jump on something that Angus mentioned in a different earlier conversation. I think there's a couple of things at play. There's the fact that there are all these pockets of there's this history of Dutch immigration to the States. And it's a long history and a deep history. So in fact, it makes sense to me. And perhaps, you know, someone listening has more knowledge about this. And perhaps this is something that, you know, we might go and research on our own after class. But it makes sense to me that there would be, so that the country music is sort of white American folk music, right? There are various US folk musics. Country is sort of the broad umbrella term for the folk music that emerged from various white populations of the US. Those populations are all immigrant populations. They're broadly speaking Western European immigrant populations, and the Netherlands and the surrounding area is part of that those waves of immigration, and some of them have been in the States for centuries and centuries. there's an interesting, so I wonder if there's kind of like a, you know, like Helen said, there's something going on where there's a connection point, you know, between these really different cultures now, but there's like something that, you know, the ancestral memory is somehow still there, or there's something that kind of connects those two. The thing that Angus mentioned recently is that, and perhaps you can, you know, extrapolate, because or rather expand, perhaps Angus can expand on this, because this isn't my, again, not my area of expertise, but I was really interested to hear you say that the Netherlands doesn't have its own folk music culture so much. Like there's a lot of folk music culture surrounding, but the Netherlands itself doesn't have its own sort of specific ethnic folk tradition, music, when it comes to music. And it made me think, when you said that, it made me think of the UK. So coming back to what the UK can learn, because it's not that the UK doesn't have folk music of its own, it's just that it's been buried under layers and layers of, you know, other cultural influences, and now the UK has its own, you know, music industry, which is like huge, global, and quite outward looking. And so the sort of the stuff that's ethnically British isn't fashionable, isn't interesting to most people, and certainly never makes it to Eurovision. And I wonder if there's a similar thing, or if the Netherlands has a similar thing going on, but can, you know, by contrast, is because the Netherlands does manage to bring Dutch culture to Eurovision, actually. Not always, but we've seen a lot of our picks had really strong Dutch cultural elements. But when it comes to, you know, bringing a kind of, you know, a folk sort of vibe, sometimes they go to the States for it, right? And like, I think at worst it can look like LARPing, as, you know, US American, and it's kind of uncomfortable, like with Waylon. And sometimes it really works, like with the Common Linnets. It's like, wait, what? Why does this work?
Two very different facets of the same man.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Waylon he sure is a person, and that's all I'm going to say about that, I think. That sounded harsher than it should have, but I said it anyway. I think there's definitely this weird connection somehow between Dutch and American culture anyway. Like, I think, cast your mind back, I'm sorry I have to do this, to 2016, the first of our hell years, and there was this massive viral video from what's basically the Dutch John Oliver, that was like America first, Netherlands second. It became like this huge internet sensation sort of thing, and that's very Dutch humor, but in a way that was very much like, yeah, sure, America's number one, but can we then like get some extra cash and like get along with it? If like, you know, it's very much maybe it's the business mindset that Dutch people claim to have. Maybe it's something else. But there's this weird connection between the Netherlands and America, definitely, that extends beyond music. As for the folk music, yeah, I mean, if we take like Schlager, that is typically German, and of course, like that's more the general German-speaking countries, but it's a specific, like, you don't have the genre German-speaking music. No, Schlager is specific genre, and then you also have like Heimat music and other things. And a chanson is a specific genre of French music, and then you can have variations on it where you go like, you know, the electronic direction with even Stromae and stuff like that on the one side, or you can go like full classical and everything in between. And the Netherlands, very technically speaking, the genre is just Nederlandstalige muziek, so the Dutch language music. Even like from the greats like Herman van Veen, who's like quite well known also in Germany and some other countries. And I mean, we had in the 80s and 90s, we had Nederpop, which was basically our version of Britpop. And that did have some specific Dutch vibes, but some big bands also came from it. But it's a bit like, it's not one Dutch folk tradition that then all the music sort of can be traced back to. Of course, if anything is now Dutch folk music, it's techno and house and trance. I'm reminded of a tweet I read recently joking about the Czech entry this year to Eurovision, saying like, if you're English, then Lights Off by Domi counts as an ethnobop. I'm like, yeah, I suppose. I suppose the Dutch could say something similar when, like those those electronica entries are sent in. So I don't know what's going on with it. I mean, Eels de Lange was quite successful in Netherlands for a long time. Waylon and Douwe Bob also were big names. Anouk definitely had. I think what's definitely a thing is, and that actually shouldn't be discounted, some of our biggest rock bands are like Golden Earring, and Golden Earring is in some parts of USA still massive. Like it's one of the most Radar Love for a long time was the most played song on the radio in the world because it would just keep getting repeated on American rock stations. They would just keep playing it, and in the Netherlands sometimes would play in other countries. And because of that, a lot of like Dutch rock bands, and then connected to that, then also like the folk bands and the singer-songwriters, then they go to Nashville or they go to Seattle or something to go write and record music with like some people that just do that. So I think that maybe actually plays a bit of a role in it all. But yeah, it's old and interesting. We've definitely gone through all the big country names in our country now, so I don't think we need to expect it anytime soon from Netherlands again, unless we send it in again. But yeah, I think that's all there is to say to that. As for the culture thing, it is, I think, also worth noting that we almost, especially in recent years, we've basically only sent stuff in English. So like after Seneca, there's only one time we sent something not exclusively in English, and that was 2021, where there was one other language in. And beyond English, Dutch, and Sranantongo, we've sent in one song in an imaginary language. Nothing of from our other languages that has more of a folky connection, like Frisian or Neder-Saxisch, which is also spoken in Germany, or even like in one of the more local dialects that also has like, they have strong music traditions, especially in the south of the country, but nothing in Limburg or Brabant or whatever. But yeah, we want to quickly, and we need to hurry up because especially I keep talking too long, I think. Like what can, especially the UK, as we mentioned, what can the UK maybe learn from the Dutch dark ages with our longest non-qualifying streak, and then coming back to great success?
Don't be afraid to pick a big name, I guess. Although, I mean, the UK, pick a big name that was popular not too long ago or is popular now, because the UK did try taking big names.
Actually, that's a consistent well, not myth, but misconception. It's Anouk just sent in a song. Like we used to have national finals, and there was supposed to be one in 2013. Anouk sent in her song, and she was like, "I'm sending in the song, but I'm not going to compete in the national final." Well, we also had always different versions. Like sometimes you send in one song, and then different people sing it, and sometimes different singers do one song. And she was like, "No, I'm doing this song, and that's it." And they were like, "Okay, sure."
Yeah, I think what the UK can do is like try to. I think the reason that maybe she felt that she could do that is because like even though the Netherlands had that long non-qualifying streak, like she still saw value in going to the contest and being part of it. And I think that's something that the British public at large, not necessarily British Euro fans, because we know and we love the contest. We know how much it means. But how does it feel to have a broadcaster that year on year sabotages your chances to do well? I think they need to make it like a really, really emphasize that they want the best quality stuff, that this is, a real opportunity to get your career, maybe not, get your career off the ground, but like it's not going to end it. I mean, look at what Måneskin has been doing this past year. I mean, granted, any other song but Beggin' should have been their hit, but I digress. But like it is not the career killer that the BBC keeps trying to make people think it is. And they've gone to these publishing companies and been like, well, we have the publishing company that works with like this artist and whatnot. And it's like, why don't you just go to that artist or encourage them to submit a good song? Because I've been saying this for years. I mentioned this before we started recording. I am a huge Little Mix fan. I've been saying for years that they could go to Eurovision and put on a great stage show. And even if they don't come left-hand side of the scoreboard, they could come away and feel proud of what they had done. And sadly, they're going on hiatus next year, so that's not going to be a possibility. But wasted opportunity for the BBC. But things like that, like, you should be encouraging your artists to want to go. I think that the fact that we haven't sent an artist of color, I don't think since 2009, is absolutely abysmal. And we have, my husband keeps telling me, we keep saying, like, we should be sending people like Stormzy and like Dizzy Rascal, and we should be sending stuff that's exciting and current, and we just haven't been doing that. And I think, it was a massive change to do what the Netherlands did in 2013, and to essentially get rid of their national final because they had this song that they believed in and that would do well. And I think it did much beyond anyone's expectations, and really turned things around. So I want the BBC to not be afraid to take a risk, but it's the BBC. So
it's incredibly frustrating, isn't it? I grew up going to school here from the late 90s onwards, and it took me being in this country for like a full 10 years before I even watched Eurovision properly, because it was just a joke, it was just like something that was like this niche, silly thing. I had no idea how huge an event it was for a start. Like, it's the biggest platform globally. It's the biggest platform that you can possibly give an artist, whether they win or not. It's the biggest platform. What you do with that platform is another question, right? That's a completely different thing. But yeah, seeing Måneskin like take over the world with that platform it should really quash anyone's doubts that it's that having that platform can really yield like riches in the 21st century.
Or even Duncan Lawrence. We haven't even talked about how big Arcade got.
Completely. That's such a good point, because actually you're absolutely right that got huge, and social media has a huge part to play in that. We absolutely need to acknowledge the fact that the age that we live in means that it's not even just about the viewing public on Eurovision night anymore. It's also about the way that songs can kind of reverberate through social media long after the contest is over, so that even if you don't win, even if you don't even make the top 10, you can still really like jumpstart your career, or like restart your career, or just get exposure to new markets. It's an incredible opportunity. Like, it's like, what a shame that the UK is just wasting it, because we are wasting it actually. The way that it is totally, as Helen said, it's totally the way it's about the way that it's viewed in this country, viewed by the BBC and also by the music industry, as Rosie put so well in her article that you'll find on That Eurovision site. I don't recall the title of it, unfortunately. I don't recall the headline of it, but if you go and have a look at the editorial section, you'll find it. Just yeah, the way that the music industry views it in this country, the way that the BBC views it in this country, and also the way that, like Helen said, non-Euro fans who are dimly aware of the contest, or maybe watch the contest but don't kind of invest a lot into following up artists and following their careers, the way that all of those groups view it is just as this sort of this novelty, and yeah, it can be a novelty, but it can also be incredibly fruitful and rich. And something that I think that the UK could learn from the Netherlands is that authenticity works. And I mean, it's not like the Netherlands is the only the only teacher of that lesson. We see again and again authenticity working, especially in the recent contest. But I'm thinking of the entries that the Netherlands has sent just in the last couple of years. The most successful entries of the last few years have all been songs that were not created in a boardroom to win the contest, right? Like the Common Linnets, Duncan Lawrence and Django McCoy all sang about really very personal things, right? Like incredibly personal songs. And I don't think we've had a very personal song from the UK, or if we have had, it hasn't shown, just stop drafting up generic stuff Don't try and send an uplifting bop. Get a song, just get a songwriter or a singer, with a songwriting team that kind of is able to pull out something personal and something that isn't trying to tick boxes. I think that's the thing. That's what I'm trying to get at, really, is don't see Eurovision as a box ticking exercise. See it as an opportunity to essentially commission and support an artist, whether they're an up and coming artist or an established artist. See it as an opportunity to commission like a banner UK artist appearing on a world stage. Look at it like that. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to take a while though, isn't it? Like, again, we can look at the Netherlands with that. It's not, Stormzy would never do Eurovision at this point in time. But you know what? Maybe like if 5 years down the line, the UK has like shown that it actually cares and is invested in, Eurovision artists, then maybe someone of Stormzy's stature now would do it then.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to touch on that quickly with what you said about the stature. I mean, Joost Lange and Waylon never thought they would want to do Eurovision, and then Anouk did it, and basically because they are like, well, not necessarily friends, but they know each other, and they were like, oh, she also did well, and there was the overwhelming response. Speaking of ticking boxes, do not get scared of the initial reaction, because both the Dutch and the national press were like, Anouk showing up, like, where has her career gone? Common Linnets, oh, who gives a shit about Joost Lange? Douwe Bob was signed off. O'Gene were seen as a one-trick pony. Duncan Lawrence was a nobody. Like, it's always been, especially in Dutch press, but also in international press, has always been at first unimpressed by the entries. I mean, hell, I remember the Common Linnets basically being at the bottom of most people's and most media's rankings for Eurovision, both in the odds and in just how they perceived the quality. And then the staging came around and we got those first rehearsals and everything, and suddenly it was like top 5, here we go. And that was like this massive, I think that also shows just keep believing in your act, and also keep listening to your art. Like, if you send an experienced artist, keep listening to them and what they say. And if you don't, then make sure that there are other people behind the scene who know what they're doing. The BBC could, honestly, if the BBC wanted to, they could throw a small bag of money at Marcel Malone and just have him and some of his cooperators work there. For the record label, it's important that you have a good eye for talent, because as we said, now you can't get a big UK artist in right now. But what you can get in is Dua Lipa's writing team, or the Little Mix writing team, or any of those big name behind the scenes songwriters. That last time that the UK was really successful, they did that basically because they got Andrew Lloyd Webber, for better or for worse, in, and that was a good result. I mean, it also helped that he was playing the piano on stage, but like, that does get in some international votes. But just make sure that you have
did go to Europe with the song to promote it, so
that also plays a role. Like, they actually believed in the song, and I don't know how much it was BBC believing in it and how much it was Andrew Lloyd Webber. And Andrew Lloyd Webber is great at promoting himself. I mean, we all see how happy he was about the Cats movie until he wasn't. So I'm just saying, like, you don't, like, just keep going for it, and especially you have a immediate shot to the final. Make use of it. Netherlands did it in 2020, 2010, 2021. I don't think we would have sent Jungle McRoy if we were actually having to worry about qualifying from a semi-final. But we knew we would be in the final. We could send in something special that would also show off the Netherlands. I remember some people basically comparing it to one of the interval acts that you'd otherwise expect to see at Eurovision that had that vibe and that was that good. So yeah, just don't be scared to send also in something bit different, and just go for it and keep believing in it, because in 2011, 2012, there were multiple polls and sometimes large majorities of the Dutch public wanted to stop going to Eurovision. And look at us now. I mean, sure, Dutch people are fiercely nationalistic when it comes to competitions, like more than most other countries, I dare to say. But like, we really have rallied behind it now, and we really just are excited about it. And that's also where we get exciting new artists. And that's what we shortly can touch upon before we have to end this podcast, because I fear it's getting overly long. the Netherlands announced recently that S10 is going to Eurovision for the Netherlands, and that you will be singing in Dutch. First time we are seeing that return since 2010, and I would love to hear your thoughts.
I'm so excited to see her at the contest. She's not someone I had heard of prior to the announcement, but looking through the catalog of stuff she's done, and she's said multiple times even before this that she wants to go. Like she's pointed it out herself and like retweeting her tweets and whatnot, being like, can I go? And so it's just like, it's so cool to see like someone who, like, you know, their aspiration has been to go to specifically to go to Eurovision, or at least that's been one of them, and then actually getting to go. I'm so excited to see the Dutch language on stage again at Eurovision. I think I mentioned in the Belgian episode that I wanted to hear it again. And I'm so excited that we get to see it. I hope that encourages maybe some of the other not big five nations to sing in their native language, especially in Western Europe. I feel like we're getting a lot of entries that are not in English, but they are coming largely from either big five nations or Eastern European nations. Although that is starting to change, with Denmark sending an entry in Danish this year, and of course Portugal always sending something in Portuguese. But especially because I think English especially has become such a dominant language for me, especially someone who came from the States, where, you know, you took your Spanish class and whatnot to, you know, graduate from high school, and then you kind of drop it unless you're a native Spanish speaker. Eurovision has been a way for me to like hear so many different languages that I would never otherwise have heard. And I did start learning a little bit of Dutch when we were planning to go to Rotterdam for the contest, and then that didn't happen, unfortunately. But I think I would love to see that back. I kind of hope that this inspires Germany to maybe send a German song, but that's just me. Because of the big five nations, they are the only one that is consistently not sending songs in their native language. But that's me. But oh my God, I'm so excited that even though they didn't get a good result in the grand final this past year, which is again extremely unfortunate, I think they still see the incredible amount of support that their song got this past year, and they're still taking that momentum. We'll see how the field pans out and when the song is released. But I think I'm not entirely. There are some nations where it's going to be consistently, given their history, a struggle to qualify for the final. And right now, unless something drastically changes, the Netherlands is on like a consistent. I'm not worried about their chances of qualifying at the moment, because I think they've gotten things right. I don't know if they necessarily need to change anything drastically at this point, but I'm so excited for them. And I do think that they are getting a well-deserved break after, again, spending 2 years organizing a contest.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the reveal that S10 is going to be the Dutch artist for Eurovision 2022. Like Helen, I'd never heard of her until she was announced as the artist. But I'm excited to get into her back catalogue. Just a glance through. She's exactly what countries like the Netherlands and the UK I think should be sending. She's got an incredibly distinctive voice, right? Like, I mean, artistic voice. She clearly has her own vision of the work she wants to put out. I love the fact that we've got a hip hop artist that at Eurovision. I mean, there's not enough rap in Eurovision for my liking. When it's done well at Eurovision, it's some of my favorite stuff out there. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see what she comes up with for the contest. And I'm, super excited that it's going to be in Dutch. It's like a double whammy of excitement. Like both, yes, the kind of artist that I want to see, and also in Dutch. What a treat. We haven't seen Dutch at the grand final since 1998. I mean, picture that. Hemel en Aarde was the last time a Dutch language song qualified for the grand final. And I mean, obviously this, the Netherlands might not qualify this coming year, but I would be surprised, just based on the artist selection, I would be surprised if they didn't qualify. And so I'm super, super pleased that this is the direction that they're going in. What a strong couple of years of choices, selections they've had, like just very, very promising direction, I think. And again, something that the UK could learn from. That's like the takeaway of this entire episode, isn't it? Like the UK, please study the Netherlands. Yeah.
You give Afro Tros a call. Like, I'm sure the phone lines are open if you want them to be.
I love that your suggestion, Angus, is like, give Mons a call. Honestly, always give Mons a call. Just, that's never gonna be, nothing bad can come from giving Mons a call.
Yeah. As for the S10 announcement, I mean, not to be a hipster, but I knew her before she was announced. I mean, barely. It was mostly, people that are cooler than me that I follow on Twitter already followed her, so they're not necessarily that much into Eurovision. Like a little, when the contest rolls around, they'll tweet about it. But they were very excited about the announcement because of it, and that's when I knew, like, okay, this is good. I mean, I'd not heard about, at some festival lineups and that kind of stuff. Some vague. I was like, oh yeah, this is an artist I'm vaguely aware of. But yeah, no, it's really exciting. I'm very happy to hear something in Dutch again. It's something distinctive. I hope this is an indication of where the Netherlands will be going with its selections. I wouldn't mind if after our couple of years of country streaks, we now go into this hip hop / alt pop direction for a couple of years. Like that would be cool and fun to see. Yeah, I was happy with the show they managed to host in Rotterdam. I think they did a great job there, but I'm also very happy to get a break from that. Because that was also chaotic. The build-up was more chaotic than it may have seemed in the international press, I think. But maybe that's true for every Eurovision anyway. But yeah, no, it's just great, and that pretty much. Oh yeah, Helen.
Just commenting on the show. I know we talked a bit about the role that social media and whatnot played in making Duncan Lawrence and Måneskin really take off, specifically in the States. And I don't know how much of this was an Avrotros decision or an EBU decision, but I loved that they were, especially in the preseason, so much more engaged on the social channels, having just various interviews, having all the different versions of the competing entries on the channel, having those Look Labs with Nikki, who's a fantastic host. But I think that's something that the Netherlands brought to the contest that will kind of hopefully stand in the way that other broadcasters have brought to the contest. So like, having things like having the flag parade and having the green room be in the audience. I hope that that type of engagement is something that stays, because I think up until very recently, other than putting the songs, the official songs on the channel, the Eurovision YouTube specifically, was quite quiet. And now that the whoever's running the social media for the EBU and for Eurovision is having such a blast doing it. And I'm glad that that's something that came out of the contest that Rotterdam hosted.
Yeah, I definitely think that's sort of both the EBU seeing its time for that and something, maybe not necessarily Afro-Tros, but in general, the Dutch public broadcaster. I can go into boring detail in how Dutch public broadcasting works because it's weird. That's not a topic for this podcast. I mean, we could talk about this for hours and hours, as you can tell. We've, so many other questions.
Spin-off. Angus waxes, I don't know, lyrical or not lyrical.
I just explained Dutch history and how now why the Dutch media landscape is as it is because of Dutch history. And but that's something for
That
another
Dutch
time.
history podcast with
Yeah,
Angus.
I'll
Make it
definitely.
happen.
I mean, I will definitely give you a short update on that after the podcast, because I fear that we slowly have to bring it to an end here. We've recorded for a while. Please keep this bit in where I say, editors, thank you. This is the final episode of the year, if everything goes all right. So, editors, thank you. Everyone at that Eurovision site, bring us three in. Thank you. Thank you, Isabelle. Thank you, Helen, for being a great guest. Thank you, Netherlands, for making a great Eurovision 2021 out of it and bringing us to Turin next year. Don't forget to follow That Eurovision site at That Euro site on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. That Eurovision Podcast at That Euro Podcast in the same places. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Like, share, rate, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you can find other ways to, send up postcards to your loved ones, telling them to listen to us if you want to. Here's to 2022. Let's make a great year together. Tot ziens.
Tot ziens.
Bye.